idea of how this is going to work. But before that, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Andy Burnham for joining us.
You're welcome.
At this event. Great to see you, Andy.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
What you may not know is this is actually quite a last-minute setup, so we are very indebted to both Mark and the team at UCL Policy Lab, and also to Luke and Conleth and the team at Warren Common for providing this space, this brilliant space here at Nova Scotia, and also, obviously, everybody at The Guardian, particularly our amazing producers, Frankie and Zoe, who absolutely got all this sorted and did all the hard work, while Kiran and I just turn up and ask questions. Now, because we're recording this for the podcast, we're going to introduce it. We're going to have some questions towards the end, so you will have an opportunity to ask them if you'd like to, so get thinking about what you might want to ask. I can hear it beeping in my ear. Is that a microwave or something? Or fire alarm? And you'll say, who's responsible for the beeping? Can you give us 5 seconds, please, to sort it out, because that won't be brilliant on the podcast. The perils of recording us live. Meanwhile, we're trying to persuade Andy to sing karaoke.
Well, suggest a song for me.
We can launch into it. A musical audition to get us going. Outside. Is anybody responsible for that beeping? Your phones? Your kids? Is it? Yes. Is that Kiran on the phone?
Gone early there, Pippa.
I'm ad-libbing here. Help me out. That seems to have stopped it.
Ah, done it. Well done.
Brilliant. So thank you, everybody. But not thank you, that beeping. Does the venue know?
Yes.
Talk amongst yourselves, please. We'll get there. That sounds like something.
Is it linked to the door?
Is it the what?
It feels like it might be linked to the front door, I think.
Is it the front door opening and closing?
Yeah, I think when it's open, it might. When it's permanently, I don't know. I'm only guessing, but I think.
Anyone got any ideas? Any tech experts in the room? The oven? Anyone left the oven on? Okay, I think we're going to have to just crack on, and hopefully we'll sort it out, and it won't get any louder. Yeah. Okay. So.
Okay, let's go.
Welcome to this special episode of the Guardian's Politics Weekly podcast. And if you haven't listened to Politics Weekly before, then welcome. And please make sure you like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
We're here in Liverpool for the Labour Party conference. We're joined by a very special guest, and apologies, a very special noise in the background too. So for anybody listening at home, there does seem to be some kind of beeping in the background. We will try and rectify that. But more importantly, thank you so much to Andy Burnham.
You're welcome.
Us for this podcast.
No problem at all. Good to be with you.
Andy, you talked about before this conference having a low-key conference where you fly underneath the radar. How's that going for you?
It's going pretty well. I'm sticking to it. I wasn't in the bars like you lot last night, so I bet you didn't see me there. But I did 1 or 2 events yesterday, a couple today. I'm going to watch Everton tonight, so there you go. That's properly in the real world.
Well, and I've been walking around the conference, and I've been talking to cabinet ministers and MPs, and one thing that they've all been bringing up is you. And the thing that's uniting them, and there is a first time for everything, is whether you have leadership ambitions. If you were sitting in a room with them all now, what would you say?
The only thing I've launched is a debate about how do we get a plan together to beat reform. And I am, of course, talking about the general election, but May 2026 is right in front of us now. And I know, talking to people in Greater Manchester, across the Northwest, but also obviously in Wales and elsewhere, there's kind of a calling for more to take to the doorstep. And that's really what we need to do. And I think, if I look at the world right now and you think of the populist right, whatever we may think about what they're doing, they are putting big things on the table. Well, we have to do the same the other way, never pandering to them, but put big ideas on the table, tell a story about this country. Where do we want this country to go? And while the government's done good things, I don't think it's come together yet as that kind of powerful story about the future of Britain.
You talk about the failures of kind of narrative in developing the story. You've also, however, said that you want to open a debate not just about how the country is run, but how the party is run. And I just kind of wanted to ask you about that. You know, what's wrong with the way it's being run, and how would you do it differently?
Well, I just would go back to the Blair government, the Brown government that I was in. It was different in those days, and I think it was a good way of doing things. I will stand to be corrected by anyone in this room or your good selves about who lost the whip in those years, but I'm struggling to think of people who lost the whip. And actually, there was a sort of feeling then that sometimes voices from all parts of the party are important. I can remember being in the PLP, you know, some of the big controversies, and Dennis Skinner would stand up and say, look, I don't agree with them on everything, but come on, everybody. You know. And it's kind of that approach, I think, is what's needed, particularly when you look at what's ahead of us. The challenge we're facing, and it's not just us as a party, it's progressive people in Britain, is quite a seismic one, isn't it? You know, in terms of what lies ahead, what type of country are we going to be? Are we going to become a darker, more divided place than we've ever experienced in our lifetime? Or are we going to muster all of our forces to fight that and therefore get all voices in the mix, you know, pulling in the same direction? I feel that if there's too much of a narrow, slightly factional way of running the party, you don't have everybody sort of lined up together.
Now, the polling makes some pretty grim reading for the Labour Party. There was a recent Ipsos poll, I don't know whether you saw it, that suggested that Keir Starmer was the most unpopular Prime Minister ever, even more so than Liz Truss. Do you think that's unfair? And, you know, why do you think he is so unpopular with the public? What would your advice to him be, given that your ratings are somewhat different from that?
I think it is unfair because of the scale of what he and the government inherited. Things went really badly downhill, didn't they, in those last years of the Sunak and the Truss administration. So it was a harder inheritance than I think any government has had in our lifetime. So it is difficult. And they've done good things. But I think what they've got to do now is turn those good things into practical changes in people's lives. So let's take rail, for instance. You know, they've renationalised rail, and I applaud them. That's a really good thing to do. But go the next step and start to reduce rail fares. Rail fares in this country are way too high, massively too high. And it's about, you know, what the changes mean for people in their ordinary lives. You know, I've re-regulated buses. I'm the first mayor to put buses back under public control, and we use that control for a purpose, which is a £2 fare cap, which we've still got in Greater Manchester. You know, much lower fares than we had before. And every day when someone gets on the bus in Greater Manchester and they tap that tap and go machine, some of them will think, oh yeah, that was brought in, wasn't it, by Labour? You know, so it's that kind of next stage now is what I think they need to go on to. But I do think it's unfair. I think, you know, the mess that the country was in was really quite appalling.
You gave an interview to the Telegraph just before this conference started, where you said that Labour MPs were encouraging you to challenge the Prime Minister. I just wanted to know how many...
Well, I didn't actually say that.
Well,
and partly...
Use this chance to clarify that, but how many people have had that conversation?
Well, no, I didn't say that. And I think, if I'm honest, some of what's happened over the last few days comes from a piece that was overwritten and inaccurate in some respects. I just said that MPs had contacted me over the summer. I didn't say what we'd discussed. Because often those conversations with MPs called saying, you know, what do you think we should do to kind of, you know, put ideas forward to kind of turn things around? So there's plenty of conversations I have with MPs all of the time, and I don't think it was quite as the headline suggested. But then it was inaccurate. It said I would borrow 40 billion more. I said no such thing. No such thing at all. I said the money that was allocated in the spending review, £39 billion for housing. Can I just say, credit Angela Rayner, £39 billion, 60% allocated to council and social housing. The point I was making in the Telegraph interview was to say, no, actually allocate 100% of that £39 billion to council and social housing, because that actually, if you go back to what the post-war Labour government did and have a major council house building programme, that is actually a path to reducing public spending, because at the moment the benefit system has to chase rents in the private sector. And this is what I say to Farage and Tice and the others, who were arch Thatcherites, never forget, back in the day. They were the cheerleaders for the breaking up and the selling off of everything. That's left Britain in a place where we're not in control of our costs. We can't do what we should do to public spending because of the pressure we face, because obviously the benefit system has to pay those, meet those rents in the private sector. There is a figure that is really important that I just would really want everyone to have at the front of their minds. Right to buy led to the loss of 1.4 million homes in this country, social homes. And there's an estimate that says that makes Britain £25 billion poorer every year right now. Poorer because of that spending that we have to meet through the benefit system. But also people with the security of a social home are more likely to be in work, or actually more likely to be in good work. Their kids are more likely to be on a stable path because of the security that a council house brings. And when I talk about storytelling, that's what I'm kind of saying to the government. Let's tell a story about working class aspiration. In the northwest of England, when I grew up, those council homes that my friends had in the 70s and 80s were absolutely everything in terms of setting people up for a good life. Let's get back to talking about technical education alongside university education. It's perceived that Labour is only concerned about the university route. Well, hang on a minute. 2/3 of kids in Greater Manchester don't go on that university route. And I'm saying, let's start talking about the kids and their life chances of people who feel that politicians are just not interested in them. So, a long reply to what I was saying to the Telegraph, if you have quite significant structural reform, particularly in housing, that is a route to re-establishing some control over public spending, creating some headroom which will reassure the bond markets. That was the argument that I was making, a new way of thinking about the economy.
We are going to get on to talking about specifically the economy. Can I just push you on one thing? Have you had any conversations with any MP about the idea of you coming back to Westminster, potentially standing for the leadership? Have you had any conversations with anybody in the Northwest?
What, ever? In my life? Or
let's use your time frame. Any conversations with any MP in the Northwest about maybe running for their seat?
There is no ability for me to launch a campaign.
Have you talked about?
I'm not going to go and sort of say every conversation I have with every MP. I have many conversations with MPs. I can't launch a leadership campaign. I'm not in Parliament. So that is the bottom line. And the thing that I'm doing is putting forward ideas that in any scenario, whoever is the leader, I think Labour needs to take on board. That is what I am saying. And the big, if you like, big idea that I want to put forward is electoral reform as a path to structural economic reform in this country. And I can talk more about that
we will come on to the economy,
later.
But I wanted to ask you first before that about the sort of the huge threat that exists to Labour that we've heard from every platform really at this conference and on the fringes, which is that of Reform UK. How do you think that Labour should tackle reform? Is it doing it right now? And if it's not doing it the way you think they should, what should the plan be?
Well, I think you start with what I said a moment ago about some of the changes in the 80s that they supported, selling off of homes, water, energy, transport. That, in my view, put Britain on the wrong path. It left people, citizens of this country, paying way too much for those things compared to their counterparts in other parts of Europe. And it left public spending in a difficult place because we're obviously, as I say, not fully in control of our costs as a country as a result of losing control of the essentials of life, the basics that everybody needs. So that's the one part of it. They supported, these are the Tory party in its most right-wing form, most right-wing form. So there's that. But then you come to Brexit. And I think what happened from the 80s through the 90s is that although structurally we were in the wrong place, the growth that we had through the European Union in some ways masked some of those structural problems. But the minute you come to Brexit, then look at the last decade that we've had, everybody. And shouldn't we start calling out the disaster that Brexit has been more directly? I think we absolutely should. because, we've been stuck now with, sluggish growth, and, all of the aspirations that we have are harder to achieve as a country because we're structurally in a bad position. The growth isn't there as it once was. Though they are the people who called for all of these changes, they are the people who took us down this path to Britain in a place where people feel nothing works properly anymore. That's their doing, and you've got to absolutely hold them accountable for that.
But do you think, though, that then you're in danger of going down the same, being seen as being the same old Labour, pushing again to rejoin the EU, or, we've had second referendum row, you're talking about rejoining. What's the, it's politically dangerous for you, isn't it, saying that you should
No, I think
that Brexit has gone wrong?
I don't think there's any prospect of rejoining anytime soon, but I do still think you call out what's put the country in this position. You be honest with people, and it's not just on the economy and growth that we've been hit, it's on immigration. Immigration control has weakened as a result of Brexit. We've replaced one form of immigration with a very different form of immigration that is more long-term. So call them out. Let's get confident on this. Call them out. It doesn't mean you can say that we can rejoin anytime soon, because that's not in our own power as a country. That's obviously for Europe to decide. But I think you definitely start to make that argument and make it very clearly.
Talking about calling out reform, do you think Nigel Farage is racist? Do you think his party's racist?
I'm not going to, I wouldn't make that statement about people, just off the cuff. I don't know him well, met him a few times, so I'm not going to say that. But I do see policies that are discriminatory, and it worries me greatly that some of these things are entering the British mainstream.
Well, Keir Starmer did say the word racist, but he was specifically talking on Sunday about the most recent reform immigration policy. Do you think he's been a bit too cautious in punching back against some of what Nigel Farage and Reform is saying?
Well, it's one of the things I'm saying this week. We kind of need all of us to get more confident in taking them on, and we don't pander. We lean back into our own values, and I think we unite a progressive coalition. It's why I want to get onto this idea about electoral reform, because I think the election we're coming towards, the next general election, is unlike any that any of us have seen in our lifetimes. It's not going to be a lineup of the parties and which one do you want. It is going to be like the referendum in some ways, quite a binary choice between the progressive Britain that we've always known or a more divisive, darker Britain. To me, that is the choice that's coming right towards us. And in those circumstances, I think you do have to lay the ground for a more collaborative politics. I was saying yesterday, when I stood for the first time under PR to be Mayor of Greater Manchester, it had a massive effect on my thinking about politics, because I found myself on doorsteps in Greater Manchester, not point scoring, but looking for points of agreement with Lib Dems, Greens, even Tory voters, because you're after that second vote from them. And the conversation changes, and actually the conversation becomes one that the public wishes it heard about politics. They want people to work for solutions and parties to pull together. So all of a sudden you're aligned with the voters and you're speaking the same language of the voters. And it takes you to a place that's more about points of agreement rather than point scoring. And I personally think that's where we need to go to. And it comes back to then the economic reform. If we had a kind of more collaborative approach to politics, I think it would allow us to have more long-term thinking about some of the structural changes the economy needs on housing, on the utilities, and on other things that will put Britain back in control of its costs. And that, to me, is the way to get to the country we all want back and the country we want to live in. I don't think business as usual politics gets us there. I think it's the problem. Westminster, to me, and its culture is the problem. The short-termism of it, the volatility of it, the uncertainty of it. And then you are in a position where you've no room for manoeuvre with the bond markets. I'm calling for quite a big change. I think young people in this country want to see as big and as bold an offer from the left as they're having thrown at them from the right. But one is absolutely core to our values. And come fight on our values. That's what I'm trying to say. And I'm encouraging the party to really own that space and step forward into it.
And can I ask you again about reform? Are you absolutely committed to staying for the rest of your term as Greater Manchester Mayor? And if you were to step down at any point, for any reason, do you worry that reform could actually win that? I mean, I know it seems unlikely given your victories, but that is not necessarily an unheard of scenario.
I am committed to my role as Mayor of Greater Manchester. I can't predict the future, but I am committed to the role. And the weird thing is about recent days, and it's always happened to me in the almost 9 years I've done this job, people have just constantly speculated about, are you going back to Westminster? Can I tell you something? I've actually not missed it much because I love what we've been doing in Greater Manchester. Everyone needs to just sort of look at what's happening in our great city region. Average economic growth of 3.1% over the last decade. Something magical is happening to me through devolution in Greater Manchester. The north-south divide, for the first time in my life, has started to narrow. I had to leave Greater Manchester in 1991 because there was literally no job I could find. My first job was as an unpaid reporter on the Middleton Guardian, and there's only so long you can be an unpaid reporter on the Middleton Guardian. In my generation of people from this city, I was born in this city, as you know, but anyone in the northwest, to get on in life, you had to go south. That is what you had to do. Today, 30 years on, in Liverpool and in Manchester, young people no longer have to do that. So why do people think in Westminster that none of that matters and I would just want to, you'd have to wrench me out of the place. Honestly, it's huge what we're building there. But as I say, I'm so committed to what we're doing. And whatever happens, devolution of power has to be a massive part of the country's story going forward. Because just let me make this point about reform. I think there's another thing that's kind of almost driving people perhaps towards them. People go out of their front door and what do they see? The fabric of their community looking somewhat degraded. Potholes, parks that are overgrown. I think it's a real issue that needs to be looked at, this whole question of how national government treats local government and particularly local government finance. I think this is becoming a major issue that is fueling some of the political alienation then that pushes people towards reform. If you can't fix something as simple as a pothole, if you can't mow the grass in the park, people will start to understandably conclude that politics can't fix anything. That thing that Osborne started, just say, oh, you can just cut councils, nobody cares. Well, honestly, when I look at it from my perspective, I see the damage that does and the way that it then, kind of makes people just despair about politics and particularly the main political parties. It can't carry on like that. You've got to get agency back into places and that will help us fight back reform. You asked me the question, Kiran, could Greater Manchester fall to reform? I'm never complacent about anything in politics, but what I can confidently say is that we have been doing things that mean something in people's lives and give us a story to tell people in Greater Manchester to say, you should continue to back what we are doing. A decade of 3.1% per year economic growth. A city region that is full of opportunity now in the way that it never had before. A London-style transport system. That's the way to fight reform.
Very good advert for what you're doing in Manchester. But we've touched on the right. I just wanted to touch on the left and how worried you are that the parts of the left are turning away from this current Labour government. Zach Wolanski, the leader of the Green Party, suggested that there's a desire on the left for a bit more populism. Is that something that Labour should be taking notes from?
Well, I'm kind of saying that we need to put forward a popular left offer. That's what we need to do. And I think we can do that. I do think that housing is a massive part of it, but also what I was saying about education. Let's start talking about the life chances of kids who are not going to university. Let's rebuild technical education. That whole theme about working class aspiration, which built this city that we're in. Let's start talking to those things again that we've not done. So you can construct a popular left offer, which is on the basis of a different way of thinking about the economy, putting those long-term structural things right in terms of the utilities, people's everyday cost of living. You can make a really powerful argument, it seems to me. And why shouldn't we collaborate? I don't know if people feel the same as me, but almost a decade in Greater Manchester, I've worked with Lib Dems, I've worked with Tory leaders of councils, we are really relentless in saying place first, not party first. And when you operate like that, it's amazing how it connects better with the public, because the public say, right, that's what we want. And I just feel that, we shouldn't be in this position of, if you like a tweet by somebody from the Green Party, that somehow you're suspended from a Labour membership. I mean, that isn't going to get us where we need to be. That type of thinking, it's had its day. If it ever was right, it's certainly had its day now.
Now, Andy, when we were thinking about what questions we wanted to ask you, we decided to do a bit of crowdsourcing.
Oh, no.
Part of my job has been going around talking to ministers, including in the Cabinet, about what the government's up to. And so I asked a few...
Oh, my goodness, where's this going? I don't know.
Your Cabinet ministers, what they thought that we should ask you. And I'm not going to tell you who they are, but you're welcome to guess. Some of them are more obvious
Cabinet ministers, you say?
Cabinet ministers.
Okay.
We'll do this quite quickly, but the first Cabinet Minister to pose a question was, well, I won't tell you who it was. The question was, would you stick to the fiscal rules? You can probably guess who that was.
Well, firstly, I will point out again what was quoted, or what I was alleged to have said last week. I didn't say, number one. But yes, I would. You need strong fiscal rules, but it doesn't mean in exactly their current form, is what I would say. Because if you look at debt, for instance, there may be a really prudent reason why you want to invest to reduce current spending. And I think you need a more flexible approach with regard to some of them. But overall, yes, I would. There's nothing about me that is saying, oh, just throw the money everywhere. And I would say to that member of the Cabinet, and indeed any member of the Cabinet, look what I've done in Greater Manchester in a decade. I've been overseeing the finances of the country's, I was going to say second city, first city. I mean, it's pretty buoyant, I would say, and
Glaswegian, I might have something
and well run. So nothing about me says you just have indiscipline. Of course, you have discipline, but you also have to be careful that you're not leaving yourself in a position with no headroom, where you can't make investment that will reduce current spending. And it's why I say, have a long-term approach. And if it is a bit more cross-party, that takes the volatility away, it takes the uncertainty away, it reassures the bond markets about it being a stable, sensible plan for the country in the long term. If politics changes, I think economics can change, and this is the argument I'm making.
Okay, we're going to, if you wouldn't mind on this bit, keeping your answers a bit shorter, I'm going to zip through them. We've got lots of other things I want to ask you about. The next question was, Jeremy Corbyn or Tony Blair?
Somewhere in the middle.
So very good. Okay, and this one was, why now? Interpret that as you will.
Why now? In terms of why what?
In terms of leadership ambitions, in terms of the interviews that you've been doing in the run-up to conference, in terms of the appearances you've been doing. Obviously, we're very grateful that you've
I need to say this. Sorry, Pippa. I need to say this again. I need to speak for the councillors in Greater Manchester who are worried about May 2026. The members of the Welsh Senedd who also feel they need a bit more to take to the doorstep. Members of the Scottish Parliament. These elections that we're talking about are not distant in the future. Britain could take a very big stride towards that darker, more divided future in a few months' time. So why now? I'm launching a debate now because I think we need more to show people what we're trying to do, both now for the country and in the long term.
Okay, so lots of the questions from the Cabinet were along this theme. So we're going to, I don't want to sort of ask them all, but I will ask one more from them and then we'll move on to something else. Alan Johnson advised you to go and find a television camera and say, I've got no intention of standing against the elected leader of our party. There's cameras here now. Would you say that?
I remember Mr. Johnson not being a sort of model of loyalty when it came to Jeremy Corbyn, if I can remember that at that time. And I also would say that I'm not in a Westminster position. I have the ability to speak independently, and I've just made the point, Pippa, and I'll say it again. Someone has to speak up for some of the ideas that we need to have that plan to beat reform. You know, if I was to come and just say, it's all absolutely on course and it's all absolutely, I'm not sure I'd be doing my job, basically. I've got to speak up to say, no, okay, there's good things the government has done, and I celebrate the good things the government has done. But, you know, there are things that more is needed to save those Labour councils, those members of the Welsh Senate, to keep Wales Labour if we can make that happen. And if you would permit me to say one other thing, because this sense is that I'm just completely out for myself and disloyal. Well, let me just say this. I spent a large part of my summer, indeed a number of very late nights in September, pressing for the Hillsborough law to be strengthened so that I could recommend it to the Hillsborough families, so that we would be in a position at this conference where the Prime Minister and the government had what was needed and that this conference was successful. So it sticks in my throat somewhat to have people, somebody who's devoted a lifetime to the Labour Party, it sticks in my throat somewhat for people who've just arrived on the scene to be throwing some of the comments at me that they have done. I did everything I possibly could to make this conference a success, and I would suggest more than other people did.
Andy, we're going to talk about policy for a little bit. We've just come from the main venue where Rachel Reeves was giving a speech, and I wanted to read out something that she said. This is a direct quote. When market confidence is lost, she's talking about bond markets here, that doesn't just show up in some OBR reports and some difficult headlines in a few months later. It is felt immediately in the growing cost of essentials and the rising interest rates. Let me tell you, there is nothing progressive, nothing Labour about government using 1 in every £10 of public money it spends on financing debt interests. Do you think she was aiming that at you? Do you have a response to that?
I honestly don't know. I'm surprised because I didn't actually say what I'm supposed to have said. I didn't say just go out and forget everything. And I said very specifically, £39 billion was allocated, and I'll say it again, allocate all of it to council housing. Why did I say that? Because there is clear evidence that the more council homes you build, the more you bring down the benefits bill. So I actually said, I think, what that is saying. So by all means, disagree with me, but at least I'm putting an alternative set of ideas forward here around building a different approach to politics, a different approach long-term to the economy, changing some of the things that are structurally wrong with it, so that you can do more of that, actually. You have more headroom. You have a more prudent approach. You're more in control of your costs. That is what I'm saying, and I'm standing by what I'm saying.
Can I ask you 2 specific questions about that then, just on a policy level? First of all, you talked about what you would want to do to the fiscal rules. You said having more flexibility about investment. The current fiscal rules allow pretty much maximum flexibility on investment. You can borrow to invest on an annual basis as much as you want. I hope this is unfair because you were Chief Secretary to the Treasury, but what would you actually change specifically about that rule? It's pretty flexible.
Well, I mentioned the debt rule, didn't I? It's quite a specific rule.
So that's to get debt falling as a proportion of GDP at the end of a 5-year
And I'd say it depends what you are investing in, doesn't it? And if there was an investment that could be shown in a short order to reduce current spending, then I think that is an investment that can prudently be made, and particularly if you're doing it with cross-party support, I think that provides the reassurance that will be needed. Everything that I'm talking about here is getting a closer grip on the public finances, and I'm speaking as an ex-Chief Secretary, but I'm also speaking as the Mayor of Greater Manchester, who put buses under public control. And let me tell you this, once you do that, you can actually make the system more efficient, because the money now that comes into our fare box, we control that fare box now, that money comes back into keeping fares low rather than going out in profits to the private operators as it used to do in a deregulated system. If you change the way things are run, you can make public money go further. And the reason why the £2 fare cap isn't in place across England is it's much more expensive to subsidise bus fares in a deregulated system than it is to do it in a regulated system. And this is the kind of experience I've been through, and I'm saying you take that more broadly to all areas of the economy. And I reject entirely this idea that I am sort of hopeless and have no idea about how to to make it add up. I'm doing it every day in Greater Manchester. No one ever says that Greater Manchester is run in a financially imprudent way.
And part of that, and what you're saying on investment, actually has to do with the OBR, because to meet that rule, the OBR has to say your investment is going to produce, growth and tax revenues at the end of that period. Obviously, Rachel Reeves, any Chancellor, has to, at the moment, go by what the OBR is forecasting to hit their rule. Do you think we need to be a bit less in hock to the OBR? Do you think they need to change the way they operate?
Well, I haven't caught all of the Chancellor's speech, but I think I did hear that we're moving to a yearly OBR assessment, not a 6-monthly. So, in some ways, that is what I think that's a sensible move, and I would absolutely applaud that.
You've called for the government to scrap the two-child benefit cap, and we all know that the economic backdrop is very difficult. Is that still something that you think should be a priority at the budget?
100%.
And where would the money come from?
Don't forget the city that you're all in. That cap puts so many thousands of kids into punishing poverty in this city, kids into temporary accommodation. Think of the lifetime costs of the damage that temporary accommodation does to any child, the disruption and upheaval of that. That is what we've got wrong. We don't give people a solid foundation now to have a good life. You need a good, secure home as a kid to have a good life.
How do you pay for that cap?
You pay for it in the way that I'm describing to you. You have a different approach to long-term thinking about the economy. And you know that those social homes that you build will, in the end, come back in terms of a dividend. But in terms of this one, I would say the moral case is the case that you just have to look at. My mum and dad said to me something really clear: never visit the sins of the parents on the kids. So why? I'm one of 3. I don't know what, in this room, what family sizes you were all born into. 2 brothers. On what basis do you say that is a sort of wrong thing to, have a family of 3? I had it. What right have politicians now got to say to people, no, you can't, and that's wrong, or make some sort of moral judgment about that? No, I don't buy it whatsoever. It cannot be justified. I don't care what anybody says. It's immoral. It should go. We should fund it. We should make it a priority.
Just sticking with welfare for a second, it looks like the government is going to come back for another round of welfare reform. Do you think we have a problem in this country with people on long-term sickness rather than being in work? And if so, what would you do about it?
Yeah, I do, because I think, again, it's the way we run this country, and particularly the DWP. How do you get people back to work from a top-down tick box, computer says no system, that actually people fear interacting with it? How do you? You don't, do you? The system doesn't support people on that journey back to work. We've argued, and credit to the government, they've supported us with DWP, devolution. You build from the bottom up, and you take a names, not numbers approach, and you support people in a very different way. You empower people. You work for the community and voluntary sector, places they trust, where they go in and they feel supported. They don't feel that when they walk through the door at Job Centre Plus often. You have a completely different way to building support for people. And this is what we're doing. We've been designated the country's first prevention demonstrator at our request. We want to have a completely different approach to the state, basically, rewire it completely. Housing first, combined with a live well approach, a different way of supporting people. I've already got the evidence that gets more people into work, because we've already had DWP devolution in Greater Manchester.
Now we've got about 15 minutes left, and I really want to be able to come to the audience for some questions, but Kiran and I have 1 more each left. So basically, if you give long answers, you're eating into their time.
All right.
So,
that's good. I'm a politician, I know what I'm doing.
But if you were in Rachel Reeves' position going into the next budget, what taxes would you put up?
I would look very seriously at land value taxation. I don't think we've got the taxation of land right in this country, because you can have people who own large swathes of land, don't use it for productive purposes, and they pay no charge on it. I would look at council tax revaluation. Can anyone support that we've not looked at council tax since 1991? The house prices are unrecognisable from what they were there. I would shift the burden. I feel we overtax people's work and we undertax wealth and assets. And I don't think you do it all at the budget, but I think you start a process of looking about getting that balance a bit more even. Land value taxation. There's a Labour land campaign, isn't there? There's a campaign that's been run for many years that calls for that rebalancing, and I've always supported them. I think that's the way to go.
And the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood's been out today calling for tougher conditions for people to get indefinite leave to remain in this country. She's saying she wants them to be able to, for example, demonstrate that they've integrated into and contributed to society. Do you think this government's getting it right, both on the policy and on the tone as far as immigration goes?
I think they're bringing order back to a chaotic system. And I think the really unforgivable thing the Tories did was just allow it to descend into absolute chaos and then campaigned against that chaos as though they had nothing to do with it. So you've got to get a grip. I definitely feel what the government has done with France is a good thing. I remember I was David Blunkett's PPS when the Sangatte Centre opened. Here's a really big dividing line, isn't it, about the loss of collaboration lost us that control over immigration. And I was the immigration minister in the Blair government, and I know that it is all about collaboration with other countries. That's what gets you to a system that starts to function better. So I think they are beginning to reassert some control over the system. I don't think anybody wins from that system looking or feeling chaotic.
Thank you, Andy. Now we've got some questions. We've got 10 minutes of questions from the audience. I'm going to be really strict. If you make a speech, I'm going to interrupt you and ask you to sit down. So please say your name and ask your question to Andy. And as with before, Andy,
yep.
The quicker your answers, the more questions
Okay,
we'll
Pippa,
get in.
I hear you.
And Frankie's roaming around with the mic. There's a question at the back in the red. Yep.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sol, and I'll make it very quick. Have you given any thought to policies around student loans and student debt in this country, which is crippling for my generation?
Yeah, I can't say I've got the answer fully, but there's been forms of graduate tax, different ways of looking at it. There is the question of supporting young people in different ways. I'm talking a lot today about housing, but can we start to think about prioritising young people in relation to social housing? So I think there are ways of offsetting, not just dealing with that issue in isolation, starting to think about how do we support young people in a different way than has been the case for the last couple of decades. So I am very much thinking about it. I, as Mayor of Greater Manchester, have priority. I take the view that young people have to be the priority for investment. You can't build a strong society when the rug is pulled from under them. I brought in a free bus pass for our 16 to 18s in Greater Manchester. I'm bringing through the technical education system I've spoken about. I'm massively supportive of prioritising investment, as I said. As to a precise formula, I can't give you that today.
Thank you. If I could ask if you keep your hand up so that Frankie can find you with the mic when the question's being asked. Who else would like to ask a question? Frankie, this way, towards me. Yeah, gentleman there. And then if you could come down to the third row afterwards. Thanks.
Thanks, Andy. We actually met at Glastonbury 3 years ago watching Fontaine's DC.
So
good to see you again.
Go. That's all right.
But,
done my credibility a bit good with the Guardian.
Yeah.
The Guardian readers.
But I live in Glasgow, and unfortunately we've got a deregulated bus system, and it is the bane of my life.
Yeah.
Expensive buses, hard to get around.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, what lessons can other cities learn about regulating important infrastructure like the buses, and any, I guess, lessons taking on those people who disagree with you quite strongly, as we've seen with the Eastdale brothers in the owners of McGill buses?
Well, they're just wrong. The company are making an argument for their own private interest, not the public interest. The public interest is massively enhanced in a regulated system. In Glasgow at the moment, if you're at a bus stop and the bus doesn't turn up or it's late, you may as well just howl into the rain and the wind because there's no accountability. In our system, the operators are accountable, and if they don't perform, they don't get paid in the same way. So it's just a world of difference, and there's not one regret that I have from putting the buses under public control. It should be everywhere, and we should do it quickly. I would say to the government, help everywhere do it as quickly as possible, because it's what I'm saying. Get a grip on the everyday basics, the things that people use every day. Get those fares down. Connect people to jobs. I'm going to do something next well, I say I'm going to do it. I know the Manchester Evening News here, and they're probably going to perk up at this point. But I'm looking at whether I can remove the 9:30 rule on the older people's bus pass and the disabled people's bus pass. Because, in my view, public transport, if you make it as easy to use as possible and as affordable as possible, the growth and the societal benefits you get from that they just keep multiplying. So get it under public control, get it out of the hands of the shareholders, start running it for the public again, rather than the private interest, and honestly, you won't regret it. And we are supporting Glasgow, by the way, and we've advised them on everything we've been through.
And on the third row here, please, thanks.
Can I just ask before that, 9:30 rule, is that you get discounted fares after 9:30 a.m.?
No, it's that older people can't use the pass. There's a phenomenon in this city of the twirly. Have you heard of that? You never heard of that? So you're Guardian, you need to get out more, you know.
Oh,
You were what? Ms. Viner, you were once a northern newspaper. I have to remind you.
I was just holding back joining in about the Glasgow buses because I use them a lot.
Well,
so.
it's a phenomenon where the driver, when the doors open and coming on with the pass, sorry, love, you're too early. No, right? So you cannot use your pass. And obviously, hospital appointments, GP, all the things that older people want to do. Yeah, it's a simple thing, but simple things matter, don't they?
Thank you.
Tom Tebow, Leeds North East Labour Party. You've talked about how you've used your devolution powers well in Manchester, but across the country those powers are uneven. So West Yorkshire and other areas don't have as much as you. What will it take to ensure that all areas with devolved leadership actually get the same level of powers?
Well, we want the same for West Yorkshire. We want the same for here. And as far as we're concerned, that's the journey the country is on. And when we all have much more power, imagine a future where we don't have to go on bended knee to Westminster for everything. We can just do it ourselves. We can build a new railway like this city and Manchester did 200 years ago. You know, it's a different, as I say, it's a different way of thinking about the country. And it's very much in keeping with the political reform that I'm advocating, maximum devolution. It maddens me that I spend a large part of every working week having to make the case for devolution again. I can't show them, look at the economic growth, look at the productivity growth. Why are you still resisting? But sadly, pockets of Whitehall are still resisting. And yeah, we just want the same for all of you. Greater Manchester has gone first, but we want the same for everywhere in England. And when we have that, the regions will be, you know, back where they should be, doing more for ourselves, and not always having to go through the sort of, you know, the ivory towers of Whitehall.
Thank you. And there's a woman at the front as well.
Hello, hi, Amina Ibrahim. I'm probably one of your least favourite type of Labour member. I'm a North London councillor. So my question is, it's clear that Islamophobia has passed the dinner table test. What do we do about it? And what would you say, particularly with what your fellow Mayor Sadiq Khan has been going through? I only have to retweet him, and I receive a torrent of Islamophobic abuse that goes on for days. Yeah. So where do we go with that?
I know, I see it, and I feel for him. He's a great friend, and I do keep in touch. I just think it's really, really terrifying that the country is in a position where we see everyday racism now, don't we? We see it everywhere. I mean, the great thing that we've got to cling to is social media still isn't the country. And I know it can feel like that sometimes, isn't it? Do you get this, you're at home and you're looking at it and you think, God almighty, what's happened to the world? But then you go out and you knock on, and it's not, and you know that as a councillor, it's not like that. But it's still the case that there is overt Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, racism just kind of swirling around. The only thing I feel is it's that big offer from the left about, don't hate each other, don't hate your neighbour. It's not their fault that you can't afford your rent. It's not their fault that transport's too high or whatever. It's successive governments' fault that is the case. And let's have a kind of an approach that is about getting a more collaborative approach to put the country back so that people can afford the basics, they can have a good life. I think because that has changed so much, the right did all of that. They created the situation where people couldn't afford basic things. And then they use that now to divide people one from another. Call them out is what I would say. We've got to get better at calling out. It's disgraceful what Sadiq has been through. And yeah, North and South are absolutely united on that, as I'm sure you are united on us beating West Ham tonight.
Thank you for those questions. Now we've got about 5 minutes left. We're going to wrap up with a quick fire round. The clue being the quick bit, please, Andy. Kiran, you're going to kick off.
Yeah, sure. Really,
I hate the quick fire round, by the way.
Yeah, all politicians hate it.
Oh God, here we go.
It's all right, we'll start with an easy one. United or City?
Well, Everton, but yeah, both.
Very diplomatic. Digital ID, yes or no?
Not now.
HS2 or Northern Powerhouse Rail?
Northern Powerhouse Rail.
Zach Polanski or Ed Davey?
I don't know. They're offspring, I think. Probably somewhere in the middle. I don't know.
Rejoin the EU or stay out?
Long term, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say it. I want to rejoin. I hope in my lifetime I see this country rejoin the European Union. I'm absolutely clear about that. I believe in unions of all kinds. The union that is the UK, the European Union benefited this country. Trade unions, people prosper more when they're part of unions of countries or whatever. That's my belief, so I'm going to say it clearly.
Lucy Powell or Bridget Phillipson?
Lucy Powell, 100%. But don't get that wrong, don't read that as anything against Bridget. It's just that I think we need more independence when it comes to the way the party's been run, more challenge, I think, of some of the things that, I don't like to see MPs lose the whip in the way that they do. I think we need a more inclusive, collaborative approach to running the party, a more democratic approach.
Really easy one to finish. Mayor of Greater Manchester or Prime Minister?
Well, I've answered it. Mayor of Greater Manchester. Honestly, this is the best job politics can offer. I thought Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport was the best, and I did enjoy that. But this is a wonderful job. To be, honestly, the difference of building from the bottom up with a place behind you as strong as Manchester. Believe me when I say it, this is such a privilege. It's the job I've loved every minute of, and and I'm completely committed to.
Now I wanted to ask you chips or gravy and make you choose.
Oh God, I mean that was one of the lower points of my political career when I was asked what biscuit did I like, and I just said,
They have this thing where they ask what biscuit a politician likes.
I genuinely don't eat. I don't eat biscuits. I just don't eat biscuits.
But you said she cheated. You said chips and gravy.
I know,
so
because I do eat chips and gravy, but I mean,
Fair enough.
I know it's like, I am a professional northerner, I accept it, and I accept my role in life, but there we are, that was my answer.
Well, thank you very much, professional northerner, King of the North, Andy Burnham, for joining us. Thank you all for coming and for listening, and thank you to UCL Policy Lab and More in Common for hosting us in this space.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Politics Weekly podcast. We'll be publishing this episode later today, and we'll be back with John Harris tomorrow too to go through Keir Starmer's speech. This episode was produced by Frankie Toby, and the executive producer is Zoe Hitch.
Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you. Very good. Well done. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Sorry if there were some long answers, but you know how it is.